Hi everyone, it's February 23rd, 2013, and we are buried in about 10 or 12 inches of snow in Topeka, Kansas. Really unusual. I don't remember ever getting this much snow, at least since I've been driving. Although it's not a really icy type of snow, so it's not too bad to drive in. And my little car, which has given me so much trouble in the last year or so, really has performed very well. I ended up being in the position to help a lot of people push themselves out of stuck positions and so forth. And over there you can see some bluebirds and redbirds taking advantage of birdseed on top of the snow. You've probably seen one of my friends or associates on YouTube a lot, Cute Cat Faith, and she makes a lot of comments about France, as she has lived there for the last, I guess, 19 years. And she helps people repatriate over there and conducts tour groups and so forth. But for a while now, especially since Greece was kind of the tipping point of trying to make an example out of it to destroy the welfare state or what have you. Now they're kind of tipping towards, oh, I wish you could see those birds over there, but I don't think my camera will really capture what's going on. Especially the media coming out of the UK is really coming after French productivity. And I think this is happening in the German press to some extent also, because some of the Merkel government was calling France the problem child of the EU, and in the UK press, I can't remember if it was not the ambassador, but someone involved in diplomacy was saying how French people only work 3 hours a day and talk 3 hours a day or something to that effect. And I don't know. There's some truth to that, but yet there's not. I've worked with French people myself, and there are some very distinguishing characteristics of work patterns and so forth. And I'm by no means any expert of how that plays out. But I've observed a lot because I have worked in Canada, in both Vancouver and Montreal, and South Korea, the United States, and a little bit in Denmark, although it wasn't really, I never really integrated into that society because the school I was working for was really Danish run, but they got around a lot of the Danish labor laws because they are a property of the University of Minnesota, essentially. But, where am I going? Anyway, there are some different factors of how work behaviors are and so forth, and it depends on where you are regionally too. But I find that Anglo workers, and I say that from like a linguistic perspective, have a tendency to work alone, and we're under a similar kind of indoctrination, with the exception of maybe Ireland, just in my opinion. But we are typically rewarded for very robotic kinds of behavior, and I've noticed in my past that the more I was able to impress with how many hours a week I was working and so forth, everything just kind of went easier for me. Relatives would praise it, and I would get more money as gifts and so forth for doing that. And it just kind of has a synergy in English environments for that. Um, when I worked with French people, it was much more collectivist, and you wouldn't ever see someone working alone for very long. And it was just far more communication oriented. And I would never call it lazy either, although I think something about the diction and the pacing of things and working as a team, there's a lot more negotiating and things that go on in that kind of environment that to English speakers looks sometimes lazy or counterproductive. And it may very well be. It's hard. You can't really judge something unless it's in comparison to something else. However, perhaps that's healthier to work in groups. I don't know. I do know that the productivity per hour in France, at least up until like around 2006, 2007, yielded the highest amount of inventory monetized in US dollars of anywhere in the world. I can't, like, for every hour that was worked, there's like $40 or $50 in net productivity. And in the States, it's somewhere towards the top, but more middling, in part because I think because our wages are lower and the cost of products in the States is lower, so it influences that. Whereas Europe is more into high quality, top selling things like luxury brands and so forth. Whereas the U.S. is more middle market, and then Asia is usually the cheaper stuff, with the exception of a lot of things coming out of Japan. So this is like a very politically loaded way of pushing things. And also Greece is constantly named as the bad guy, but the Greek population now and before the crash happened puts in the most hours per week of any country in Europe. So how can they be the lazy ones and then used as the example or the template for the ideal work week? It just doesn't make sense. And I've said this before in my website/blog that actually Southern Europeans save more than Germans do. And this is just something that isn't publicized because it doesn't fit the stereotype. So right now, what whoever pulls the strings in the world is doing right now is they're trying to discredit Southern Europe. They've discredited Africa, Southeast Asia in the past and so forth, but now they're advancing north, and then next will be France, and so on, and it's just something that you don't really want to get caught up in. However, I do believe, like, on the individual level, perfectionism and true quality service should be the aim, regardless of how corrupt your organization is, because it's not the consumer's fault that that the system is with so many faults, and there's just so much predatory stuff going on at this time. So I'm very wary of the things that, it, of, what am I trying to say? Mediocrity. We don't want to be mediocre in terms of our performance. And one of my callers at work who called in said, in the case of the United States, we are not Americans, we are Americans. And that sounds kind of corny, but I think every country should apply that. We want to really look out for each other and not spread vitriol and negative impressions of things. And eventually that will inspire confidence in everything, actually. There are more articles out right now in Canada about the real estate being priced above what consumers can afford. And this is also really important too. I've seen a lot of fatalism in labor attitudes in Canada, and I don't think that's good either, but I do understand it, because if you're priced out of an affordable lifestyle, it makes you do passive aggressive resistance to things. So, the world is kind of messed up, but there are a lot of resources at our disposal at this time. The internet shutdown has not happened as yet, so educate yourself as best you can. One by one, wean yourself of business practices, products that are against your ethical standpoint and worldview. Don't be passive about this kind of stuff, but it doesn't require demonstrations or any kind of hostility whatsoever. It just requires differences in how you allocate your spending. So I appreciate your viewership and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Bye.